Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I'm getting to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there, to stay in that leadership lane? And today, I have another special guest. I'm getting to talk to Dustin Jones. She's the Vice President of Human Resources at WorldLink. She is also a volunteer. She's served the Dallas HR community. She's also a speaker. And I am so glad to have you on the show, Dustin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, man, I am so glad you're on. One of the things that I like is whenever I'm talking to guests, I reflect back to many of the guests I know and have known for many years. And we've known each other for a long time, serving Dallas HR. And that's basically where we met. I think it's been over 10 years ago. And I believe
at least
was that the Government Affairs Committee?
It was.
First? Wow.
Yep. Long time ago.
I remember when I first volunteered for that committee, Terry had actually asked me if I wanted to be on the committee. And I said, sure. You know, what is the committee? And she said, Government Affairs. And I was like, great. What does Government Affairs do? And little did I realize that we were responsible for putting on the Employment Law Conference back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, man.
It was a long time ago. We had some really good conferences back then.
Yeah, no, we had some great conferences and you continue to serve today. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk leadership. We're going to talk all things leadership with you. And I want to start the show. I mentioned that you work for WorldLink, and I would just like for you to share just a brief highlight of who WorldLink is and how you serve your customers.
Oh, great. So WorldLink has actually been around for 23 years. We just celebrated our anniversary here in May. And we're a privately owned family company that has just kind of really taken over the Metroplex, and we've gone national, which is fantastic. So WorldLink is the engine driving digital transformation in the world's leading enterprises. So we bring top talent, skills, and technology expertise together to power the next generation of digital innovation. So we're talking emerging technologies, right? And so we have the ability to go into companies and help them learn what that means and to make them a better company in those areas. So we're part of the Audi group of businesses. And basically what that means is it's a collection of companies. So we have WorldLink, we have a company that's a consulting company called Inspired Intellect, the Audi Family Office and the Audi Foundation. Some of those are venture capital groups. So we help invest in new businesses, which is fantastic because, the company started off as just two people in an office in Richardson, and they've moved to where we are now. And so we want to be able to give back to those that have that entrepreneurial spirit and wants to start a business. So we're looking at those as well. But we really, as a collective, we advise on and implement enhanced technology capabilities for enterprises along with their digital transformation journey. So as we know, over the last 5 years, emerging technologies and things have changed. I mean, we've gone to 3G, 4G, now we're going to 5G, and we've been a part of that. And so we're continuing to grow that piece of our business and to support very large companies across the country. We do have a global footprint as well that is growing. And so we also are a large scale talent organization. So not only do we go into companies and help them with that transformation, we can also support that with staff augmentation and talent acquisition. And so that gives us the ability to really deliver and niche skill sets and operational flexibility to the world's largest technology projects. And we're really excited about that. And if you want to know more who our partners are and who we support, you can take a look at our website.
Perfect. Absolutely. And I'll put the website link in the show notes so people can learn more about WorldLink. I love that. It's amazing and fascinating where our technology has come and where it's going. And I love it whenever you said the entrepreneurial spirit started with two people. I remember the first organization I started with back in 1995, the owner of the company said, we started with me and another person and a truck. It was 2 men in a truck. And of course, he, built his organization to over $100 million. So it's, I just love that story. The current company I work for is like that as well. Yeah. I started with just, a couple of men in a truck. And so I love that. Hey, so kicking off the show, I've known you for a long time, but I would love for you to share the Dustin Jones story. I would love
Oh,
for you to share, like, where did you grow up and how in the world did you get into HR in particular in leadership?
so I am from San Diego, born and raised in California. My whole family is still there. And I started off in politics. I worked for a congressman out in California for about 2.5 years and moved to Washington, D.C. after I got married the first time. And then ended up in Texas via Northern Virginia, essentially. So I've been in Texas now for going on 22 years. So this is home for me. But I still have those California roots and my family there. And so I love to go back and visit as much as possible. But I actually kind of fell into human resources. So I went from working for a congressman's office to working for a nonprofit in Alexandria, Virginia. And then when we moved to Texas, I had to kind of start all over. And so I ended up getting a job as an HR assistant for a tech company during the big .com boom. And did that for about 6 months and then went into marketing for 2 years because I have a communications degree. And so I really thought that that's where I wanted to be, was in marketing. And then the bubble burst on the .coms and I was unemployed again, and ended up at a manufacturing facility and as an HR assistant as a temp, and had a great manager. And she really kind of turned me on to HR. And I've been doing that ever since. So I've started at the very bottom. I mean, I was helping people get their uniforms. I mean, that was one of my primary roles as an assistant in the HR department, and kind of worked my way through that. I had lots of opportunities, not just in HR, but environmental safety and health space. I worked for a couple of blue collar companies. So service, one was a forklift dealership in Addison that I loved. In fact, I met my mentor there, and then moved into telecom. Gosh, my son was maybe a year old when I did that. So about 15 years ago. And then I've been with WorldLink now for 11 years. And I've just consistently kind of, moved up in that field. And I love it because it's a people, and I'm a people person, and it's a people field, right? So it's kind of, that's kind of my condensed story of where I was and kind of where I am now.
Isn't that funny how we remember how long we've been in a company when we think about our children's age?
Yeah.
Let's see, who's
Well, those are
one,
the
I mean,
milestones.
15.
Right.
I love that. You had talked about, I didn't realize I was just in San Diego just a couple of weeks ago. It's where my stepbrother lives. I love San Diego.
Yeah.
And I might have known this, but I didn't realize your background in politics, which is probably why you had an interest in government affairs.
Yes,
When
that's right.
you were with me at Dallas HR.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned your HR manager kind of turned you on, or, opened that spotlight to
Mhm.
HR. And I
Yeah.
always like to talk about mentors. You even use the word a mentor. And so I would love for you to share, like, who were some mentors that have helped you along the way? And what was it that they did that helped you?
So Kelly was my first manager, my first true manager in an HR role when the .com ended and I had to find employment as a temp. And being able to watch her and see how far she had progressed in her career and the type of woman that she was, for me, was really important because I had not had a woman in a leadership role that I respected to that point. And she really was, you need to make decisions based on what you want with your life.
Mhm.
And I think that was really good for me. I was in my mid to early 20s. I was getting ready to start a family, and I really needed somebody that was able just to say, hey, if this is what you want to do, I will help you get there. And so she gave me my first job. She hired me full time, and I was with that company for several years. And she moved on to bigger and better things, and she's down in Houston somewhere now. And, we do stay in touch on Facebook, and that's fantastic. But I think my real mentor happened when I ended up at a company called Malin and Addison, and they're a forklift dealership for Malin brand forklifts. And his name is Mike Graham, and one of the most neat, just exceptional men I've ever known in my life. And he came in as a director of HR for that company and really took the time to sit down with me and say, what do you want? What do you want out of your career? Do you want to stay a manager? Do you want to be in leadership? What do you want? And he really pushed me outside of my comfort zones. because I was really good at just kind of the day-to-day, I'm going to stay in my space and not challenge a whole lot. And he really pushed me to just say, no, if you have questions, if you have comments, if there's challenges you want to make, here's the right way to do that. And I became a trainer. I became a manager in that role. And he actually helped me find a job as a director in the IT field. He recommended me for that. And I'm forever grateful for him for taking the time to see the potential that I had. And, I do stay in touch with him and his family a little bit. And I always remember what that was. And that was that true mentorship. And so because of that, it's given me kind of an idea of what I want to do with the people on my team. What do you want to do? I don't have an expectation ever that if somebody comes and works for me, that they're going to be with me for 20 years. I mean, that would be fantastic, right? Because you learn a lot and you have all that, but it gives me the opportunity to really kind of develop the people on my team to say, what do you want? Where do you want to go? And not put them in a box, which I think sometimes in HR we can do. And I don't want to do that. I want to be able to support and push these young women that are on my team. And most of them have been young women. I've had a few young men that I've been able to, hopefully give them something that they can use in the next role that they take. But Mike really had a really big impact on me when I was about 30 years old. And I'd already been doing this for about 8 years at that point. So, you can find a mentor at any time in your career. It's not just at the very beginning.
I love that. And I love how you said Mike challenged you. And I want to stop there just for a second on the challenging piece, because I've heard some of my coaches have talked to me about, whenever people challenge you, you want to surround yourself with those people, because you'll be better. Because a lot of times we're not sure we want to go that direction, and we're challenged and we walk away and we're like, I need to do that.
Right.
So I want to ask you, do you have a formal mentor program in your company, or do you just take it upon yourself? You know what? One of my roles as a leader here is to develop my people, and this is how I'm going to do it. How do you mentor others just on your team?
Yeah, so we don't have a formal program here, but one of the greatest things about working for this company is our CEO, Burgess Gadiali, is really in tune with the fact that every single person in this organization from the top to the bottom can be a leader. So it doesn't matter if you're sitting at the front desk answering the phone, or if you're sitting in an office in the corner of the building and have a team that reports to you. Every single person is not just a leader, but they're a salesperson for the organization as well, right? So you're representing that organization. So for me, having the freedom to be able to look at my team and say, what do you want to do and how do we help you get there? And if there's something else in the organization that you want to do, let's do that. So we have a young woman on our team named Autumn. She started off as our front desk, and she was an administrative assistant, essentially. She moved into HR, never been in HR before. She's been with us now for almost 5 years. And she's moved from an admin position to an HR analyst position. And now she is a lead project analyst, and she's the point of contact for one of our other partners and for the Inspired Intellect team. And she does a lot of that. So she's really moved and grown because she's raised her hand and said, I want to do this. And we are in an environment that allows for that. And I've had people that have decided, I don't particularly want to do all of HR. I want to just do benefits. And so we've tried that. And so that's kind of the greatest thing about working in an environment where they really support, get to know the whole company. And from an HR perspective, we have so much involvement in the entire aspect. So I do things with sales. I do things with marketing. I do things with our finance department and our legal department. And so we're not siloed into just that HR function. And it really shows that HR is the heart of a business. And if you allow us to be able to kind of spread out, they get so much exposure so that when they do at some point move to a new company, it's going to be the easiest role they've ever had, because they've learned so much being here. And that's part of the reason I've been here as long as I've been. It's because I've been able to do so many different things and to be able to influence that. And, my analyst can influence that. My manager gets to influence that. And we get to collaborate across the board with so many different parts of our company that it's an opportunity that you don't get everywhere, which has been fantastic.
I love that. I absolutely love that, especially when you start talking about cross-pollination, you start talking about working with different verticals and, you know, you talked about your sales, you're talking about your operations and just getting exposure to all those different areas. I mean, that's fantastic. Let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you're very passionate about this and helping develop and watching your team members have success, you know, and that's part of leadership. But I want to ask you, you know, was there a moment like when you found your lane, like you found the purpose, like this, like you had mentioned early on, hey, this manager, she introduced me to HR. And then you talk about Mike, he's challenged you and helped you kind of see and pushed you. But was there a moment when you said, you know what, I really love what I do?
That probably was when I started here.
Hmm.
So kind of the story with WorldLink is I was a single mother with 2 kids back in 2010. And the company that I was working for was a venture capital company, and they were being purchased by another venture capital company. And so they had decided to change out their HR person. And a recruiter from WorldLink called me just out of the blue, said, I found you on LinkedIn. Would you be interested? And so I stepped down from a director of HR to an assistant manager. And that was because it was close to my home. It looked really great from an organizational perspective, and family was such a priority for this company that it allowed me to work the hours I needed to work and to take care of my kids and make sure that my children were my priority. And from an assistant HR manager, I moved up to manager, and then I moved up to director, and now I'm a VP, right, in the last 10, 11 years. And I didn't have a problem stepping back because I was working in an environment that it was like, you know what, I can really grow here. And I loved coming to work every day. And I loved the people I work with, and I still love the people that I work with, and I still love coming to work every day. And so I think it was probably about 11 years ago when I was finally in an environment that wasn't politically charged or numbers charged, or it was more about the people and allowing people to kind of spread their wings and develop and grow with the company. Because if you grow with the company, you're growing the company, right? And that's really important, that you're growing your people, because it just grows the company organically. And so that was when, you know, I had always had a smile on my face. I always loved what I was doing. And I think that's probably when that aha moment was like, yep, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place. I'm in the right career.
When you're growing with the company, you're growing the company. That is fantastic. I just love that. You know, you mentioned something, and I want to dive into this just for a second here. And that is, you mentioned you went from a director of HR to an assistant manager.
Yep.
And one of the first leadership books I read when I started my leadership growth was called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell.
Yep.
And one of the laws is the law of sacrifice. And the law of sacrifice says you have to give up to go up.
Yeah.
And there's many times people that I have observed or I've talked to, they're not willing to give up to go up. They're like, hey, I'm a director. I need to be a director. I need to be a VP. But yet you saw that opportunity. It's like, hey, I can learn. I can grow within the organization. And so my question to you is like, where did that come from? That willing to, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to see that. Where did that come from?
I mean, to be really honest, Bruce, it came with my kids. My children were my priority. And when I was commuting all the way from Plano to Las Colinas every day, I needed something closer to home. And it worked out that I was going to lose my job anyways, because the new company wanted a different HR person, which is fine. And it all kind of, you know, set in place. And when I got to sit down, and I think I had 4 interviews with the company. And when I got to sit down with each person and really discuss what could happen here, I didn't have a problem saying, you know what, I'm going to be closer to home. I'm not going to be driving as far. I'm going to have more quality time with my children. And this is such a family environment that I'm okay stepping back and seeing where this goes, because there was so much potential to be able to show them what I was capable of and to get outside of my comfort zone and to grow the department. And so that's what I did. It really stemmed from wanting more time with my children, to be very honest. That was the priority for me. And if that meant I had to step back, then I stepped back, and that was okay.
Love it. It's all about the why. I joined Armstrong Relocation in 2004, and I went from, I took a 50% pay cut. It was almost a similar situation, but you used the word potential. You saw that there was also potential, but at the end of the day, I was looking for autonomy. I wasn't, so I could be with my children, and I could be at their sporting events and different things like that. I love that. And listen, anybody that's listening right now, take out your pen, get your journal out, take some notes. There's a lot of good here, especially when it comes like that lesson right there is so important that, sometimes we could be moving along in our careers, and sometimes we just have to step back and to go up again. So I love that. Hey, let's talk leadership. Here we are, 2021. We're, we're not out of the pandemic, but we're navigating through it. That's for sure here in the second half of 2021. I always like to ask my guests, leadership, everyone seems to have a different definition for leadership. If someone says, hey, Dustin, what is leadership to you? How do you define it?
Yeah, that's a hard one, Bruce, because you're right. Everybody has a different definition of it. And for me, with leadership, it's not just that you have the title. In fact, the title doesn't really mean anything if you're not a person that's willing to roll up their sleeves and do what everybody else does, and to lead by example within your organization. So one of the things that I love about my boss, about our CEO, is that he is willing to understand all aspects of our business and to give people opportunities and to say, hey, how can I help you? And you don't get that a lot in the C-suite. And he really does care about the benefit of everybody from the very bottom up within this organization. And so for me, a leader is somebody that is willing to say, hey, do you need help filing that stuff? Or do you need my team won't let me do onboarding anymore because it just makes more of a mess for them. But the fact is that if it needs to get done, they know that I'm going to step in and help. And I think that's part of that leader, is that it's not too small for me to do. And it's not too small for me to step in and help my team and really be in tune with my team, but also to lead by example. I think we have a lot of leaders that are leadership in title only, and they don't say, if my team needs to do this, I need to know how to do that as well. And so I'm going to lead by example by really understanding and being in tune with my team, which I think really is important, because that's part of the mentorship of that team. And and if you're going to be a good leader, you need to be willing to develop the team underneath you. And so that's what it is for me. And I'm able to go to my boss with absolutely anything, any question that I have, and he's got his door open and he's willing to take the time. And that's just speaks volumes for this company, as a family organization, and as where they truly believe that if you're a WorldLinker, you're a part of the family. And that is shown over and over and over again. But that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. But I think leading by example is super important, and being willing to step in and roll up your sleeves and do what the rest of your team does if you need to.
Yeah. I mean, you're working with a great company whenever you look and you see your leader rolling up his sleeves and leading by example, right? It's modeling leadership, and then everyone else follows suit. And that's fantastic. No, it sounds like he's very, very special leader. So, you're the VP of HR. So you have more than one thing that you do every day. I learned whenever I took the HR certification that you're focused on a lot of different things, right? It's business strategy, it's workforce planning, it's comp and ben. I mean, just keep on. It's a lot. But there are probably a few things that you find yourself enjoying more or doing more of. What are a couple things that you really enjoy in your role most?
I think I like the stuff that's kind of out of the box. So, if we have an audit that comes in, I love being able to see that audit from start to finish, because I know that we can do really well. I love to be able to be part of my sales team when they have RFPs. Those are a lot of fun to do, because again, it's outside of the normal HR process. But because we're in the people business, where we do talent acquisition and staff augmentation, because of that, it allows me to have kind of the ability to do things that a normal HR department wouldn't get to do. Of course, the employee relations stuff for me is important. And I'm not talking about the negative employee relations stuff where you have to, put a person on a PEP or a PIP or something like that. It's everything that we do as an organization is employee. It's client care, it's customer care, it's employee care. So that part of it is really enjoyable for me because it gives me an opportunity to understand the people that work for us and the clients that we have, and how do we partner with them to make sure that we're delivering the solutions and the resources that they need. I enjoy that quite a bit. I'm diving into diversity and inclusion right now, which is a really big hot topic across the board. We are a organically diverse organization. 71% of our leadership are women. And of that, I think more than 50% are women of color. And so that's really important for me, the fact that we have organically been able to do that. And so now I'm trying to put the words around what that looks like as a program that we can share. And so I'm halfway through that, and I'm continuing to work on that and present that to our CEO and our leadership. And I'm enjoying doing that because that's something a little bit different than I've done before. So developing those kind of programs, that's enjoyable for me. And because it also is part of the people organization that we are.
I love how you talked about on the employee relations side, you talked about the employee care. As you said that, it just really resonated with me. Like there's never been a more important time to show that in the organization. But one of the things I want to ask you about is you had mentioned, I also like rolling up my sleeves and diving in with the sales team. And typically you don't hear that from HR leaders. And I guess the question I want to ask you is, as an HR professional, how, I think that's more of, you can't just dive in and say, okay, sales guys, I'm here to help you. You had to like develop some influence. I think you used the word, you like to influence the process as well. How do you, or how does someone in your position, how have you been able to develop influence in the organization to where when you do, walk over to the sales team and help them with that function, and you're able to immediately have influence in the process?
I think that's a little bit of a difficult one because, like I had mentioned earlier, our CEO of this organization believes that everybody's a leader and everybody's a salesperson. So when you have an executive leader that says that you in HR, whether you're the VP or the analyst or the admin, you have an opportunity to sell for this company, it automatically takes HR out of that silo of they don't know anything outside of onboarding, terminations, disciplinary action, those types of things. And it already gives everybody else in the organization that says, hey, our HR team can probably help with this. And so they'll say, hey, Dustin, you and your team, we have some questions that we need to answer. Can you help with doing this? And so that, again, I use the word organic, but this company has such a different view of every department that it's a function of the company to grow the company, that every single person is a salesperson, every single person can be a leader. And if you raise your hand and say, hey, what can I do? Then it's going to come. And so, we're, again, HR, in my opinion, for this company is the heart of the organization, which means that in order for the company to grow, HR is going to be part of that. And we're going to reach out and we're going to help in different aspects. And so I don't work for a company where that's not the norm. So it's hard for me to give you an answer on how do you influence, but part of that influence is being willing and saying, yes, I'm willing to help, or I'm willing to step up, or I'm willing to do whatever we need to do to grow the company. And in other companies I've worked in, HR's never really had that ability or function because HR professionals will tell you that we're kind of siloed and we have a hard time getting into the C-suite and being asked at the table. That is not the case in this organization, and it never has been. And so I love to be able to support that and to encourage the rest of my team to be part of those conversations. And so again, it's that kind of organic ability to be able to do that here. And that's part of the reason I love being here, is because I get that opportunity.
Man, that is so fantastic. Everything you said about that. I will say that I remember when I took my HR certification many, many years ago, and Barbara Hoover talked about, she said at the very beginning of the training, she said, the most important thing for you is to know the business. And yes. I thought to myself, that's one of the things that people in HR a lot of the people that are really making impact, right? Really making a difference. They don't look at themselves as being in HR. They look at themselves as being a leader in the organization. Of course, they
Right.
get to serve people like you do. But you said something else, and this is so good. When we talk about influence, you said it's being willing to raise up your hand.
Yes.
And it's almost like you've built a brand that says, hey, I'm here to help. And what can I do to help you? And so now people see that you have that brand and it's helped you do all the things you want to do. I'm curious, you've been there for quite a while now. Have you seen any, do you think HR is changing? Have you seen it change over the last 10 years?
I think as we move into this new world of a lot of remote workers and multiple generations in the workplace, I think HR can't do anything but change.
Mm.
The way human resources was 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, is not the way it is today. It's not even the same way it was a year ago, given just all the stuff that has kind of happened in the last 12 to 14 months. And if HR doesn't change, your business is not going to be able to grow. And so you have to be able to be flexible and adjust. And so, yes, the answer to your question is we've absolutely changed in the last several years. I think we've become more flexible. I think that HR departments have to be a little bit more diligent. They can't just say, well, that works and that's always worked for me, so that's going to continue to work for me. That doesn't work. I mean, we have a thing here in this company that when you look at a process and they say, well, I've always done it that way. Well, that's not the answer. That is never the answer. It's okay. Well, you may have always done it that way, but what's a better way of doing it? And allowing people again to raise their hand and say, we need to do it this way because I think it would be better. And allowing for other departments to come in and say, your processes or human resource affects my department, but I'm seeing something that I don't understand. And HR has to be transparent. They have to make sure that they're saying, we're asking you to do this for X, Y, and Z. If you think there's a better way, let us know. Let's collaborate and figure that out. So HR has, I think, had to become more collaborative with their other departments within the organization. I think they've really had to make sure they have a pulse on what's going out in the community. And I think that too, that HR no longer can sit in a silo and not understand the business as a whole. And that was something that I learned from my mentor years ago, was that you can do HR in any industry across the board. You can do it anywhere. But if you don't understand the business that you're doing it for, you're never going to be able to make HR function well within that environment. So you have to know the company too. And so that was something that I've asked my team is, if somebody asks you what WorldLink does, you need to be able to tell them what WorldLink does and, have a small elevator pitch so that you understand the business. And, so we've definitely changed. And this year has been very challenging for HR, and learning how to adjust to people being remote and how do you meet the needs of a person that's 100% at home. That's been challenging within our business. It's not, I don't think, been as challenging because we've had a lot of people that have worked remote, or they work at a client site, so they're not necessarily in our office building. But keeping communication with them and making sure that you're reaching out and how are you doing, and here's the updates that you need to know and things like that. It's a lot different going from, hey, I can talk to you over here because you're sitting across from me, to you're 500 miles away and remote, and I still need to make sure that you feel like you're part of this company. So that has been challenging, but HR has definitely is so different now than it was when I first started few years ago.
just a while ago. Oh,
Just a
that is
little
so
while.
good. That is so good. Being flexible, having those campaigns to reach out and just continuing to bring people in. I love and we mentioned it before, knowing the business. I love how you talked about, hey, if you're on my team, you really need to have, even if you have an elevator pitch, you need to know what we do, right? And how do we make money, and how do we serve our customers? And at the end of the day, what's our mission? Where are we going? So I love all that. I know that one of the things that, you're busy, like you are busy, but you still find time to give back. You still find time to do some volunteer work, but you also do some speaking. And I remember hearing you a while back, and you're a very good speaker. I like to ask, when someone asks you to speak, to whether it's Dallas HR, Collin County HR, or a different organization. What do you typically like to speak about? Is it around culture? Is it around, what do you typically find yourself speaking more about?
So I haven't done any speaking a whole lot recently, obviously, because of the environment, but my desire is leadership. And especially women in leadership. So I support a great organization out of New York named Generation. And it was started by young women in college that wanted to be able to give women in high school and college an idea of what was out there for their careers. And so I kind of fell into being able to be part of that with them. And they do these bus tours over all the major cities in the country in the summers. And they take young women around and they introduce them to CEOs and director levels and VPs of other women in these leadership roles. So I get an opportunity every once in a while to speak for them on panels, or I did an impromptu about a year ago for them. And it's really about motivating and encouraging young women that there is so much out there that you have the ability to do. And not to be scared about the unknown. And that for me is just, that's what motivates me to be as good of a leader as I can be, because I want to be an example for young women coming in, and so that we're supporting each other and we're pushing each other and making sure that they understand that there's so many opportunities. But I really enjoy that piece of it. But I also enjoy, from an HR perspective, being able to share knowledge that I've gained over the years. So I've done compliance. I spoke at HR Southwest with an attorney friend of mine, where we split. Here's compliance stuff that you need to know, but here's it from the legal side, but here's it from a practical business aspect, right? Because all the attorneys really want, and I'm not saying anything against Paul or Dustin, but they really want to make sure you're following that legalese so that you're being compliant with the law. But how do you take that, and how do you really make sure that that works from a business perspective? Because every business is different. And some businesses can do certain things and other businesses can't. So that's really something I enjoy as well. And just being able to share kind of around what my experience has been, and how that might help other leaders in HR functions, that, you know, maybe a tidbit of that would help them be a better HR person, or, you know, help grow their department a little bit better. So I just like to be able to get up and speak. So give me a topic and I can.
No, that's great. And I find that a common thread for leaders on the show, that they do like to, whether we're just speaking or just finding ways to, like, giving back to help develop and grow others. I love that, women in leadership. I also noticed real quick that you have a John Maxwell coach training certification.
I do.
Did you do that so you could be a better coach in the workplace? Why would you get a certification like that?
So I did it for a couple of reasons. Number one is I want to be able to figure out a way to take that and do leadership training on behalf of the company.
Yeah.
But also to become a better speaker. I really loved that program. I got certified 2 summers ago. Obviously haven't done a ton with it within the environment. I've met some really great people. But speaking is one of my passions. Leadership training is one of my passions. And I wanted to be able to figure out a way to do that within the organization and through the organization. So one of the things that we do as a company is we're a solution provider. And so that could be a number of things. That could be talent acquisition. That could be consulting in that, you know, the emerging technologies world, but it could also be, hey, what do you guys need from a leadership perspective? Is there something that we can do to help you with that? And so I did that in a way to not just better myself, but also to better and to be able to maybe give some solutions in that realm. And then COVID hit. And so you know, here we are a year and a half later, and, you know, that's still something that's out there. But I had initially done the John Maxwell for myself because it was something that I'd always been interested in. And I wanted to continue to do that, but it's also something that I think would be a great for my business and for my company here to be able to support them in a different way.
No, that's fantastic. I will tell you that the point I want to make here is that it doesn't matter where you're at in your career. You can never stop learning, never stop
Right,
growing.
absolutely.
I love how you shared how, you know, you're already a great speaker, but yet you want to even be better. And, you know, I took Toastmasters back in 2004 because I wanted to be a better communicator. I wanted to be able to present And it's just whatever we can do to continue to get better. I just absolutely love that. Man, this has been so good. The time is moving so fast. I want to ask you a question I always like to ask my guests, and that is there something like, do you have a daily practice, like something you do every day that helps keep you on track? Are you an early morning riser? Anything in particular that you find yourself doing every day?
I make lists because I gotta figure out what's going on for the day. And my day never starts off, you kind of start it and then you've got 10 things you need to do. And then you figure out you can get 2 done because you've added 5 more. So I get in first thing in the morning. I'm a fairly early riser and I like to start my day off in the morning, and it's kind of quiet around here at 8 o'clock. And that's great for me. So I kind of have to organize what I'm doing. So I'm finding that I make lists a lot more than I used to, just to kind of keep straight. But really, I think the biggest thing for me is just being flexible and kind of taking things as they come, because you can't be really stringent in this role because you don't know what's going to walk through your door 5 minutes after you get there or 5 minutes before you leave for the day. Right. So I really don't have a whole lot of like daily things that I do other than making my list and kind of saying, okay, this is what I'm going to need to try and get done today. And then really just being flexible as things come, because with HR, man, it's hard to try and plan your day out because it just changes every day.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme. So no, I appreciate that. I think the main thing is that everyone has a system, right? It doesn't matter if it's making lists or reading or whatever it is. It's having that system in place to just keep you on track. Hey, I want to ask you one last question before we shift over to it's time to accelerate. And I always like to ask my guests, have you ever received some advice? I mean, you've given some great advice today, but have you ever received some advice from like a family or a friend or a colleague? It was just so good that you find yourself sharing that with others today.
So my dad was a big influence in my life. He still is today. He's probably my biggest cheerleader on anything that I do. But I was a fairly emotional child, and I would complicate things. I would overthink things. And he used to tell me, don't make it complicated. And I find myself telling myself that, and my team, that don't make it complicated. Things do not have to be complicated. I believe that we have a tendency to make things a lot more complicated than they need to be. And especially in HR, when you can't take a minute to step back and take a breath and say, don't make it complicated, then you will have a tendency to kind of get upset and frustrated and make things more complicated than they need to be. I mean, and I'm not saying things can't be complex, but they don't have to be complicated. And so I hear him in my head probably on a daily basis saying, Dustin, don't make it complicated. So.
What a gift. Oh man, what great advice. And from your dad, don't make it complicated. I told you, all of our listeners, write that down. Don't make it complicated. That is so good, man. The time has just flown by.
Yeah.
We're going to shift over to an area, what I like to call, it's time to accelerate. I'm just going to ask you some fun questions as we kind of conclude the segment. First question I always like to ask is, would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast?
Read a book.
Read a book.
I love that paper being in my hands. I love it.
Mark it up, fold the pages, highlight it.
Yep.
I'm just curious, have you read any good books in the last couple of years that have kind of stood out? Anything, one book in particular stood out?
Not one in particular, but anything John Maxwell. I probably have a ton of his books at home. And I'm a big Dan Brown fan. So that's kind of I love Dan Brown.
Yeah. I saw John Maxwell back in 1999 at the First Baptist Church of Carrollton, and there were probably less than 100 people there. Can you imagine today? You wouldn't see that
would
today.
Be full.
That is Failing Forward book out. And I'm just a big fan of John Maxwell. And so I appreciate you sharing that. I do like to ask this because, I mean, we've come out of an incredible time. I mean, we're continuing to navigate through it, but like, what are you grateful for?
Oh, my family, 100%. So I live in Texas. My family's in California. I got remarried almost 8 years ago, and my kids are kind of my rock. And my husband has been one of the most just encouraging and, wonderful people in my life. And I can go home and I can vent and he'll sit and listen to me and not give an opinion, which is nice. And then we're done. And he's my best friend. And I love that God put him in my life, and just my children, being able to watch them grow and have a job where I've been able to be present for the majority of their lives. And, as a single parent for almost their entire life, it's been good to be in an organization. So I'm also grateful for this family that I have here too, that has allowed me to have that balance and to make sure that my family, my kids come first, but it's absolutely my family.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Let me ask you this. What are you most excited about in the second half of 2021?
It's been pretty amazing to watch this company grow over the last 11 years. And so I'm excited with the new clients that we have and the upcoming projects that we have, just to see how this company continues to grow and move forward. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what the rest of this year brings for the organization.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think we're seeing a lot of things starting to open up. So time will tell. Time will tell what all that looks like. But
right.
Hey, let me ask you this. What energizes you?
I think just getting into the meat of everything. I enjoy being busy. I don't like being bored, and we're not ever bored at this company, but I really enjoy being busy and taking on new things and being able to share kind of, what I do with other people in the organization and to be a part of that. And so, I get to work, and if I know I've got a bunch of stuff going on, then I'm happy because it makes my day go by and I'm learning something. And if I can learn something new, so we've had some things go on at the end of the last like 2 months that has challenged me to come up with some solutions and some things. And I really enjoy being able to do that. So that type of thing energizes me as well.
I love how you said that because one of my core values is continuous improvement. I feel like if I'm not learning something, then I feel sluggish. So it's like you get energized by learning something, and of course, being around people. And you just talked about, anytime you're challenged with work or project, that's awesome. Okay, so this is the last question I have, and one of my favorite questions I like to ask. And here's the question. So Dustin, 10 years older, is knocking at your door, and you're going to go open that door. What's she going to tell you?
Just keep at it. Keep your head up. I mean, things get hard. Life gets hard. It happens. Remember what you've already been through, and that you have the ability to get through whatever is thrown at you. And you have a great support system. So just when you start to kind of get down or doubt yourself, just remember where you've been and where you are now, that you'll get there. Right. And so continue to have dreams, continue to have goals in your life. You don't just stop moving forward just because you get to a certain age or to a certain point in your life. And I think it just to keep your head up and to keep moving forward.
Oh man, that is so good. Remember where you've been. I love that. And of course, keep dreaming big. So, oh man, this has been so good.
This has been fun.
Yeah, I've enjoyed you being on the show, you sharing your wisdom and perspective. Hey, if someone wanted to connect with you and learn more about you, how would be the best way that they could connect?
LinkedIn is going to be the best place. Yeah.
I will definitely put a link in the show notes, so that way if someone wanted to connect with you, they certainly can. And okay. Dustin, oh man, it's been a thrill. Like seems like forever since we connected. So, but you're definitely driving in the leadership lane. I've always admired your leadership, and I appreciate you coming on the show. And most importantly, I appreciate your friendship.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. This has been so much fun. I've enjoyed it immensely, and thanks for thinking of me and having me. It's always good to catch up with you.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to share this. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks.